The same generic advice to do more practice problems, to do more Anki, to reread your content review books, or to review your mistakes is what's keeping you stuck or plateaued in your MCAT journey. What separates a 520 scorer from the rest of the pack is not their ability to regurgitate every fact present in a content review book. It's their ability to extract patterns, to eliminate answer choices, and to apply content to unfamiliar scenarios. That skill is called metacognition. And in today's video, I'm going to show you the exact 3 strategies that I use to unlock my 518 score. I'm going to show you how you could implement it in your own practice and through thousands of repetition, build that effortless MCAT intuition and metacognition. So let's get straight into the first clip. My first tip is to treat each practice question as 4 separate learning opportunities. You want to get into the habit of eliminating answer choices either based on your content knowledge or evidence presented in the passage. Not only is this an effective way to build test-taking strategy, but it's also an effective way to rehearse applying the content that you learned while also revealing any gaps that you might have in your content knowledge. So for instance, if you consistently struggle to eliminate answer choices that involve the immune system, it could be a gentle reminder to go back, review, and refresh on the chapter discussing the immune system. We're going to see what this tip looks like in real time with a practice question I brought from the UWorld question bank. It reads, a musician plays the trumpet in a marching band. The musician tunes the trumpet inside a room and then goes outside to play. When outside, the trumpet sounds flat, plays a lower frequency. Which of the following could account for decrease in frequency? So we're looking for a decrease in frequency, and what are some of the factors that might cause that? Well, the most obvious one comes from the equation velocity equals frequency times wavelength. A decrease in frequency can be achieved in 2 ways. Either you increase the wavelength or you decrease the velocity. But we look back into the question and find the word trumpet. And in general, the MCAT likes using instruments as a model for a pipe open at one end and closed at the other. Hopefully you memorize that we can model frequency for these pipes by the formula F equals N times velocity over 4 times length. If you didn't memorize that, don't worry, you can still derive frequency from memorizing the original equation, wavelength equals 4L over N, and using V equals frequency times wavelength to solve for it. But since I did the legwork of memorizing this equation, I'm going to use it to make it easier for myself. And in this equation, we find one new variable that can impact frequency, and that is length. And specifically, since frequency and length are inversely proportional, to cause a decrease in frequency, we would need an increase in length. And I want you to notice, to pay attention to how I spent the past couple minutes trying to build a framework to evaluate the answer choices before actually looking at them. And that's actually my second tip, which is try to predict the answer before looking at the answer choices. If you find yourself consistently picking the distractor answer choice, this is a very effective workaround because the MCAT will try to intentionally trick you. They'll include answer choices that are filled with scientific jargon that sounds right or that uses all the key buzzwords that make the answer choice seem right, but has one word in it that invalidates the whole thing. But if you spent the time critically engaging with the question, trying to build a framework before you look at the answer choices, you're much less likely to be tripped up by these distractor answer choices. So let's see how tip 1 plays out in real time by evaluating each of the answer choices line by line. The air outside is warmer than inside, which increased the speed of the sound waves. Well, an increase in speed would cause an increase in frequency because they're directly proportional. And you could see that from both of these formulas. And in the question, it specifically stated a decrease in frequency. So we could, right off the bat, eliminate A. More energy is dissipated outside, which causes sound waves to lose energy. And here we see the classic distractor question. More energy is dissipated outside. While we might be tempted to pick this, energy is not anywhere in any of the equations we written up beforehand. Energy is related to the intensity or the loudness of a sound. It has nothing to do with frequency. So while there might be a decrease in energy, that does not have any bearing or any effect on causing a decrease in frequency. And that way we can eliminate answer choice B. Moving on to choice C, the musician shortened the length of the trumpet, which decreased the wavelength of the sound waves. Choice C is wrong on two accounts. We established with the above equation that frequency is inversely proportional to length. So a decrease in length would cause an increase in frequency, so that part of the question is wrong. But if we keep reading, it also says decrease the wavelength of the sound waves. Again, frequency and wavelength are inversely proportional, so a decrease in the wavelength would cause an increase in frequency, which, again, we can eliminate answer choice C for. And finally, answer choice D. The air outside is cooler than inside, which decreased the speed of the sound waves. Well, in both equations written out beforehand, we can see that velocity is directly proportional to frequency. So a decrease in speed would result in a decrease in frequency. That's plausible, giving us answer choice D as our answer. And this is a great example of how tip number 1, evaluating each answer choice line by line, and tip number 2, to predict the answer before looking at the answer choices, play out in real time with an example of a physics question from the UWorld QBank. All right, so my third and final tip is to make the most out of reviewing your full lengths. And we're often told, review your full lengths. That's going to increase your score. But a lot of us take the easy route. We're already mentally drained from taking that exam, or maybe we didn't like the score that we got and we're feeling a little down. But that's no excuse to take the easy route. And when you do that, you're only shortcutting yourself. So the way I broke down my full length reviews was into 3 columns: the why incorrect column, the logic for the correct answer column, and the areas for future revision column. The first column and the third column are very closely related, and you'll see what that means as I continue to explain. So the first column delves into why incorrect. Specifically, what was your logic and what made your logic break down? What I see from a lot of students is that they default to a content error, and they'll say something very general because it's easy. So for instance, a lot of students will say content error, enzymes. But that's not enough to increase your score. If it truly was a gap in content, that's fine. Get specific with it. Maybe you have trouble interpreting Michaelis-Menten plots, or maybe you have trouble deciphering between uncompetitive or mixed inhibition. You have to get specific with it instead of just blandly saying content review, enzymes. And that's really going to help when you get to the third column, areas for future revision, because if you target a specific content gap, guess what? You probably only have to watch like a 15-minute YouTube video and do a couple practice problems to drill it in instead of rereading the whole chapter in a content review book. So it's really going to address that content gap directly while also helping to streamline your study and review process. And, these first and third columns aren't only limited to content review gaps. You absolutely, and you will find that a lot of your questions missed are from strategies. When you're writing down why you got so many incorrect questions, where your logic broke down, you're going to realize that you probably have more strategy fixes than content fixes. And what would that look like? How do you remedy a strategy issue? Well, let's say you're really bad or you consistently are not performing well at extracting information for figures. Maybe for your logic being incorrect, maybe you incorrectly interpreted a figure. Well, now your areas for future revision are probably going to be to break down as many figures as you can. Maybe even search up studies that aren't directly related to the MCAT and start breaking down their figures. Start labeling the axis, start noting what you see, start noting any trends and connect them to your basic sciences. So you can really see that columns 1 and 3 work hand in hand in addressing both your content and your strategy gaps. Now, this column is where you really develop that secret MCAT metacognition. I got to the point where, after reviewing about 8 full-length exams, where I would be able to predict while I was reading the passages some of the questions that the MCAT would ask me. And to get to that point, it takes more than just thousands of practice questions or reviewing a bunch of full lengths. It requires you to find the logic for the correct answer. What does that mean? You're going to go through the explanation. And what you're going to do is put the explanation in your own words. And over time, you're going to realize patterns. You're going to realize trends. You're going to realize what the test writers think. And you're going to begin to think like a test writer instead of a test taker. To get to that point where you're reading the passage and predicting the questions, it requires you to not only understand their logic, but to internalize it and to put it in your own words. And that is the biggest shift you're going to notice that's going to give you success on the MCAT. So do not skimp out on this section and do not skimp out on this review. As you can see, a lot of my explanations are really, really wordy, but that's what it took to really understand the question and to make sure that I never miss a question like this again. And that's what it takes to get an elite score. This is how you effectively review a full-length exam. And that's going to wrap up today's video. Hopefully you found those 3 tips as helpful as I did when I was studying for my own MCAT. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to drop them in the comment section below, and I'm going to do my best to answer each one of them. If not, make sure you like the video and subscribe to stay tuned for more videos like this that will get you on your way to your dream MCAT score.